The chilling murder of Charlie Kirk has shaken up the United States and the entire world. The murder of every individual should shake us up. When a human being is killed, especially in cold blood, is the death of a universe. Is the death of the human being created in the divine image. Is the ultimate desecration of everything sacred and divine captured in a human being's life. And this makes no difference if they're from the right or from the left, Democrat or Republican, whatever religion, background, race, color. Every human being is sacred. What is particularly disturbing in this particular situation, what I'd like to speak about, is firstly where it took place. Utah Valley University, a campus, yet another campus, the place that was supposed to be protected from all the hostility and violence of the world, our schools, where our children go to study. And secondly, the reason. We don't yet know who the murderer is and what conspiracy was behind it. But here is a man exercising his right, freedom of speech. Yes, he has strong opinions. Some people disagreed with them, but he spoke about them peacefully. He was a man of peace. I just heard one of the things that struck me, where he said if we don't communicate with each other, even if we disagree, we ultimately dehumanize each other. And dehumanization will always lead to ultimately violating each other's rights, including each other's lives. A man who engaged, and especially was able to capture something very few people can capture, the minds and hearts of young adults. Regardless of his opinions, regardless whether you agree with his opinions, but he should be shot down because he's voicing his opinion. Now, some of you may wonder, would I say the same thing if this happened to a left-wing activist? Absolutely. Because it has nothing to do with the opinions. It has to do how we look at each other and the very sanctity of life. And that's what he advocated. How could anyone disagree with that? That we should be able to communicate with each other. So much has been written and so much more will be written by people who knew him personally. I know some individuals who knew him personally. With a loving family, his wife Erica and his children, who he cherished. And the many friends that he fostered, some that agreed and some didn't agree. Staunch, unapologetic positions for the sanctity of life, for the freedoms we all cherish. And yes, as a Jew, I could say, for the Jewish people, for Israel. To silence a man like that, I can understand why, because he was able to inspire a young generation to support a conservative right-wing position. And there are people who just don't accept that as legitimate. But back to that point. You don't agree with something, why are you dehumanizing? Why do we personalize it? Character assassination. So now some of the websites are removing some of their more insightful rhetoric. Makes sense, sensitivity, but can we really change? There's no redeeming factor to such a death. But one thing for sure, that if we don't learn our lessons, and we don't finally get, not to the symptoms, but to the root of the issues, and the root of the issue is, yes, the sanctity of life, and that people can disagree, even adamantly, but still respect the dignity of a person's right to express themselves. Frankly, the success of this country is built precisely on that. The e pluribus unum, from the many one. Meaning that we have diversity and strong and even differing and contradictory opinions. But ultimately, it's all part of one larger symphony. I know it sounds poetic, especially in this context where the body is still warm. But the word outrage, or the word shock, seems to be inadequate. And again, I want to make this very clear. You say, why don't I do a video every day about every murder out there? The truth is I should. Unfortunately, there's just too many. But here it's far more representative of a shift that must change. I would like someone to make a case that disagrees with me, using Charlie Kirk's staple approach. Prove me wrong. Would you disagree with anything I just said? And if yes, what's the reason behind it? And even if you did, should you love me less? Should I love you less? So it goes back to what defines us. If we're defined by our opinions, if we're defined by people we agree or disagree with, and frankly, the media and so many other of the public so-called information dissemination is feeding the flames. Without mentioning names, a while back I was invited to be on a panel on one of the major media networks. They wanted me to accuse the other party of being an anti-Semite. Now, I've been on media, so I'm on those lists of the producers, I guess. They wanted me to call the person an anti-Semite. And I said to them in the pre-interview, to the producer, I can't say this person is anti-Semite, I don't know them. I could say an act or certain words or behavior sounds anti-Semitic. No, we need you to accuse them of being anti-Semite, and not only that, we need you to yell. And I said, but that's not my style. I can speak firmly. I speak and in a very resolved and non-compromising fashion, but I have my style. And I remember she tells me, no, but that's not what we need. We need blood. Gladiators, I'm putting it that way, it's become entertainment. I need to yell at that person, the person yells at me, and that's what gets ratings. And this was told to me very explicitly. They didn't take me onto the show because I refused to agree to yell, and I refused to call for blood. I said, why can't we disagree in an intelligent manner? Television and media is not intelligence, I was told. It's entertainment. It's to engage people, to get them riled up. We need them to come back and feel that they can be stimulated by these programs. So all the cliches and all the cynicism and all those films made about media manipulation is not so off, which only contributes to the cynicism and to the skepticism of where we to gain truth from. So perhaps this is a wake-up call for us to return. I remember my grandfather telling me, my grandfather was from the old country, from former Soviet Union. And he said to me, my father was a journalist, and my grandfather used to like to jab him at times. He said to me once, my grandfather, everything in the newspaper is a lie. I said, Zayda, Grandpa, this is America here, free press. He says, yeah, but who decides what should be a headline? I'm not talking about an earthquake or a major event that everybody objectively knows is a major piece of news, but the rest of the headlines. And then he threw out this line nonchalantly. Even the date when the newspaper was printed is a lie. It was printed the night before. He says, you get older, you'll understand. So I'm not from those conspiracy theorists, but there's a lot of truth to the subjectivity, and especially when the media decides it's their civic duty to bring someone down. So perhaps this can serve as a wake-up call, I guess, to those that are the thoughtful people among us, that don't get caught up in this rhetoric, don't get caught up in this polarization, that we should start looking for truth in here, in the human condition, in human interaction. And that is the legacy that Charlie Kirk left. Discussions, conversations. You want to debate? By all means, make your best case. But at the end, smile. Don't personalize. Don't assassinate. Character-wise or worse. And that's what breaks my heart, because All human beings have the dignity, as the founding fathers put it in the Declaration of Independence, said very loud and clear. We find these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and the Creator has endowed us with inalienable rights, including the rights of freedom of expression and all the freedoms and the rights that the Declaration declares. As we approach the 250th year of this great country, it's time to re-embrace that. And creator is used, the word creator, because that's an all equalizer, that all of us, no matter who we are, were created in the divine image, and as such have an absolute indispensable right to our lives and to our choices and to our expressions, but never the right to dehumanize or to hurt or worse, kill another human being. That to me is the headline here. And that has been so terribly desecrated. The only way you repair, you redeem that, is by celebrating and honoring and dignifying life with more passion than those that hate life and are willing to destroy life. May God bless us that we should have that wake-up call, each individual in our own homes. Talk about it with your children. Talk about the sanctity of life, sanctity of your life, sanctity of the life of your family members, of our community, and even of strangers, of all human beings on this earth. That's the only way we redeem things like this, by actually talking about it, but more than talking about it, embracing it. It should become part and parcel of our conversation. Yes, at home, from the youngest age, in schools, on campuses. That should be the predominant headlines. Instead of us being manipulated and young impressionable minds being used by all kinds of agendas, many of them quite nefarious. And again, we should be blessed to finally come to a point where there will be no more evil or destruction, because the divine knowledge will fill the world as the waters cover the sea. Be blessed and be well.